class. So we are going to start on complex inheritance patterns. So previously we had spoken about Gregor Mendel and his contributions to inheritance. He did a lot of studies with pea plants, and with that he was able to establish or lay the groundwork for inheritance patterns. Now what he worked with was simple inheritance or simple dominance. And lucky for us, all of the traits that he worked with for pea plants had to do with simple dominance. And so from that, he was able to gather large amounts of data and be able to lay the groundwork, as we said, talking about law of segregation and law of independent assortment. He was also able to figure out that what we call alleles, he said they were factors and that they were passed on from generation to generation. So let's just quickly look at simple dominance again. This time we're going to just use little kitty cats. We've got our white cat here that's purebred, capital B, capital B. Our recessive kitty cat is black, little b, little b. And of course when they mate, they will produce all white cats because white happens to be dominance in this particular example. But what happens is each one of these, because they take one allele from each parent, they will be heterozygotes. So they produce 100% white phenotype. That is what we can observe, and their genotypes are heterozygotes, capital B, little b. Now suppose we took two of those hybrids or heterozygotes and crossed them together. Then we're going to get something very different. And I want you to pay close attention because every time you mate two heterozygotes, you will always get these probabilities. So in this case, we're going to end up with 1/4 or 25% being a purebred because each one of the parents can contribute that capital B letter. The next two will be, or 50% or 1/2, will have the same phenotype and genotype as the parents. They are both heterozygotes. And then the last one, there's a 25% chance or 1 in 4 chance that each of those parents will contribute the recessive allele, which in this case is the little b, and produce a black offspring. Remember that was masked in the earlier one because the capital B was dominant. But now, since they both have one of these alleles, they can produce a kitty cat with black fur. So with these two hybrids, you will always produce a 3-to-1 ratio. 3 out of 4 of the offspring will have the dominant trait, 1 out of 4 will have the recessive phenotype. So let's move on to these complex patterns of inheritance. Our first one is called incomplete dominance. And by that, obviously, that means that dominance isn't quite as strong as maybe that simple dominance. So this time we have a purebred black cat, capital B, and it mates with a recessive white kitty cat. And instead of getting what we would think all black cats, because it's incomplete, there's going to be a blending effect. So we know black and white mixed together produces, yes, gray. So all of our intermediates here, the heterozygotes, will have a completely different phenotype from their parents. We still have 2 alleles, capital B and lowercase b, but now we have 3 phenotypes. And they are blended. So let's look at this, and you can follow along on your paper. We have red snapdragons and white snapdragons, and when mated together, they produce pink because there is incomplete dominance. So as we said, we have 3 different phenotypes, and that capital letter allele really isn't dominant over the other one. So what I'd like you to do in just a moment, you will pause the video. When you pause the video, I want you to fill in where you see the open bullet there. Fill it in with this top bullet that is underlined. And notice you need to also fill in where it says 3 phenotypes. Then I want you to solve the 3 crosses that are there. Notice this has to do with the snapdragons, and the red is noted as capital R, the white as capital R prime, R prime. So that's a little different notation from what we've worked with before. And then the pink, because it's getting one allele from each parent, will be capital R and then R prime. So just take care with that, and then actually the crosses are quite easy. So please, if you'll pause this video, fill those in, and then we'll get going again. Our next pattern of inheritance is codominance. And by that term co, we know that means equal or shared, and that's exactly what happens. Notice also with this particular inheritance pattern that we're using all capital letters and that we have two different capital letters. In previous inheritance patterns, we've always used the same letter. So that's a little bit different, but it's also a tip-off that it might be codominance. So we have a black cat again, and then purebred, and a white cat that is also purebred. But instead of blending, as we did in incomplete dominance, we actually have equal dominance, which means that they will be, yes, black and white. So now we have both colors, both equal strength, and so that's why we get this pattern of two different colors on the same organism. All 4 offspring will look this way. So in codominance, as we said, we have 3 phenotypes, still only 2 alleles, but this case it was a big B and a big W. Noted here on this slide, you see 2 examples. A roan cow, that's a mating between a red and a white cow, and they get the splotchy red and white. We have the checkered chicken, also known as Andalusian, and they have that black and white pattern. And then something that we might be more familiar with is our AB blood type. Because it's AB, it has equal strength. It has A blood and B blood sort of together. So please, if you'll pause the video and fill in under codominance that both alleles are equally dominant and the examples. And then you need to solve for those 2 questions or 2 matings that deal with checkered chickens. Now we're going to move on to our third type of inheritance pattern, which is called multiple alleles. This is a little bit different, but very interesting indeed, because this is how we inherit our blood type. So in this particular type of inheritance, there are more than 2 alleles within the population. In fact, there can be many. There could be, 10 or 12. It just kind of depends upon the trait. But it's always important to remember that each individual, each organism, only has 2 alleles, one coming from their mother, one from their father. So here's an example here on the slide of different types of rabbit fur. Okay, and then also, as I said, our blood types show this type of inheritance pattern. So if you will, pause the video and fill in for that top bullet. And then you can start it again in just a moment. So our blood type, we have 4 major blood types, those being A, B, AB, and O. There are others, but they just are not as common. And so we primarily talk about these 4. In humans, we have actually 3 alleles. So we have an A allele, a B allele, and we have the O allele. Now, if you notice on the left-hand side of this table on your slide, you have the letter capital I and the letter lowercase I, because these alleles sit on the I gene. Now, they can be written like this, as shown, or they can also be written as I've done on your paper, which is showing the genotypes AA or AO. So the O is that little I there, the recessive. Now, most of us prefer to use the AA, AO, and that kind of thing instead of adding the capital I's, but I want you to be aware of this notation in case you happen to see it on some test. So it's already shown that type A blood can have the genotype AA, which is homozygous, or AO, heterozygous. For type B blood, it can be BB, homozygous, or BO, heterozygous. For type AB blood, that's the only type it can be because it is codominant, AB. And for type O blood, it's going to be OO, and that is recessive. Notice on the right-hand side of this on this table that the red blood cells have different kinds of patterns to them. This alludes to the fact that our red blood cells have different types of antigens on them. Now, antigens are these little carbohydrates that we talked about on our cell membranes, and they act as little flags or receptor sites. And these little antigens, in that respect, help us determine whether or not we have what type of blood. So they're showing the A that has triangles, the B that has little circles, and AB has both. Notice O has no antigens on its cell surface, at least for blood type, and that is because it is recessive. And if you happen to have studied blood type before, you know that O is considered the universal donor. So here is an example of blood types and also including Rh factor. Now Rh factor is inherited like simple dominance. You can either be positive or you can be negative. Notice that O positive and A positive comprise most of our population, with over 70% having those two blood types. O negative, which are the universal donors, have a very small percentage, less than 10%. Notice that AB negative is by far the rarest. It has less than 1% of the people have AB negative. And they are considered the universal recipients. They can receive all kinds of blood. Excuse me, that would be the AB positive. I apologize. So what I'd like you to do is to pause the video and to solve the ABO blood typing problems that you see, those two problems. The last type of inheritance pattern we're going to talk about is polygenic traits. So poly means many, genic, genes, many genes controlling one particular trait. These traits are things that we see a wide variety within the human population, such as eye color and height, and skin color, shoe size, and so on. And so when we look at these, we can see this is sort of showing a bell curve, that the majority of people are in the middle, that they have medium, in this case, skin color or a variation therein. And as we go farther out to the extremes, fewer and fewer people have that lighter skin or the darker skin. It just kind of depends. And this could be true of shoe size, eye color, and so forth. So it has to do with the intensity of these traits. And so on your sheet there, if you will notice, it has to do with capital letters. So the more capital letters that you see, the more intense this happens to be, whether it's the larger shoe size or skin color or eye color. And then as you go down with fewer and fewer capital letters, then it becomes much less. So it doesn't matter which of the letters are capitalized. You just count them up, and then you look at a key and you determine the intensity or whatever that genotype happens to be. So please, you can fill that in just a moment. Don't forget to fill in where you see those empty bullets. And that's it right now for our complex patterns of inheritance. Thank you.